I'm not going to wait for anyone else to show up. I'm just going to start now. So, welcome everyone. Let's start with Funky's question about best 5 capos to use that don't have awakening and aren't mythicals. So, I think a lot of that is team composition and synergy. So, isn't necessarily I don't want to say there's no good answer, but I think there's a few good options there for things that work. My personal favourite at the moment is Miranda, because her crit damage buff is insane, especially with the skin making the buffs being unstunnable. There's probably a better way of wording that, but that's what I'm going to go with. And adding 30% crit chance at max as well is just, that combination is just insane. There's also currently a bug with her that means that crit chance never drops off. So although it says below 35%, I feel like it's just always there. So you just always have crit chance to go with that insane crit damage bonus. So hard to argue with anything above that. The other one is Ava, because the counterattacks that do a reasonable amount of damage, they do particularly synergize with the the awakened capos that have a large amount of fight power. So I guess that's kind of going to be less relevant when you have specifically a set of 5 non-awakened and non-mythicals, but it's still a good amount of damage. And the bit that's more subtle, and actually probably one of the stronger elements to it, is additionally the enemies will lose all their buffs, because removing buffs includes removing shields, which especially with like the Godfather's, I can't remember the name of his skill now, but the hat which provides the shield, that stripping that entire shield off has a lot of value, and it removes things like her own skill for the Ava Mirror, which is 20% dodge chance that you're removing. So there's quite a few skills that are good to, or buffs even, that are good to dispel. Does it actually use the word dispel? Does it remove lose? Yeah. That's the other subtly strong thing about Miranda, is the teammates are immune to dispel, which I do think works if they're below 35%, because I have seen stuff being dispelled, so I'm not quite sure why the critical chance isn't below 35% with the way it's worded, but anyway, I'm not going to stress about it. But the other reason Ava will be up there is the 20% dodge chance. I'd probably say she'd be up there even with just the passive or just the 20% dodge chance from the buff, so the combination of the two and the fact they synergize so strongly instantly rates it up there. And don't sniff at 30% fight power. I would say both of them, with the way they work, they don't even necessarily need to be max stars to be useful. I would say that they are both useful even at 1 purple star, even in the rest of the team, just because of how strong their offer is. So have to skip Gianluca, Chew and CMV. Of those 3, I'd say CMV, even pre-awakening, so like my 2 purple star CMV. The buff for the self and surrounding teammates, and the 20% crit chance from the skin, is really strong, because not being able to die for 3 rounds is really, really, really good. Other capos that are really good. Omega offers a lot of shielding. I mean, mine's 2 purple stars, so it doesn't look like that big of a number. But the amount of shield he offers, and the frequency of it, and the fact that it's in chunks, again, to counteract the Ava dispelling. And the slightly more obvious good part is the resurrections. And also the skin which you can get, which chains that revive to also have the option that if his HP is less than 20%, heals Omega for 50% of his HP, which happens twice. So essentially heals him to full health net. So if he has 10 billion health, it will heal him for 10 billion health over the course of it, minus healing reduction. But it means that he then offers yet more shields and yet more resurrections. So it's a really strong capo when he can't get a burst down. People will laugh at me for saying it, but Wheels is nerf. If there's a skill damage capo that you can nerf, you can essentially take them out of the game. Because again, even at 2 purple stars, 60% damage reduction for skills and fight power means that he is going to... your Wheels, if he was an equivalent star, would just be stronger than the capo that he's nerfing. And by nerfing their damage skill as well, you're taking that effectiveness out of them. Especially if they're running fight power talents, etc., etc. You're getting more value out of your Wheels than whatever you're putting in front of. Let's think. In a world where there isn't as much burst damage, people overlook Eugenio, but because there isn't the same sort of burst damage, minus Miranda crits, the lifesteal can have quite a lot of value, again from the skin. I've probably already named 5, but I'm going to keep going. Azumi and GG for the fight power boosts that they offer. Azumi offering stun immunity for 2 rounds isn't that impressive, or reflection with the skin. But GG offering 20% health. Again, since there aren't as many flashy, high damage skills flying around, has more value. So, not a bad choice. Of the skill damage capos, Caesar's one of my favourite because of the anyone affected by a support skill, which, given I've mentioned that Ava and Miranda are some of the best to go around and buff everyone, then you're basically always going to get the double damage boost to his damage skill. So it's hard to argue with what is already a half decent damage skill compared to other capos. Then doing double damage instantly makes it one of the best. Hits opposite and surrounding, current and surrounding enemies, yeah. So hitting 3 capos for that's pretty good. Situation in the Wesker to counter if someone is running lots of skill damage capos. Although the big thing here is the dispel all active support skill effects from current enemy. But it's also in the second round. So you can't really use Wesker as a 1 purple star if you're fighting, let's say, like against this account where you'd be fighting against max stars. Otherwise he will die in the first round and not be useful. So he's not as situationally good as Wheels at 1 purple, because Wheels is starter battle. But say you had a leveled up Wesker, I do rate him. I'm still going to pronounce his name Javier, even though I know it's Javier and can't say it properly. Again, like GG, offers 20% max health and 20% accuracy to all teammates. Is a direct counter to Ava's 20% dodge chance, so that pretty much rates up there as, again, if you're going to call the meta of Ava, Miranda, then I'd argue Javier has to be up there. His skin, when it eventually becomes available for diamonds, it's kind of worse than the base skill, but reducing dodge part chance by 40% is a lot. So it's kind of worse because it targets lowest HP. So you'll tend to hit support capos, you'll tend to hit the capo that's just about to die anyway. So reducing their dodge chance is less useful, but having said that, it's still not bad. mostly because you're getting that on top of having a buff skill which buffs accuracy and HP. Who else is there? Ornella. Again, new capo, not so well tested, so taken with a pinch of salt. But anything that adds fight power is decent. That 16% of that low star, I'm pretty sure max star lines up roughly with Ava's 30%. And then shield of 50% of their health. So again, they don't work at low stars. It's one of these, if you've got them leveled up, they'll work. But it's also a stacking buff of, again, I think it's like 130% of max star for that shield. And again, the subtly strong part is also the capo becomes immune to stun and dispel effects for 3 rounds. So it's like a Miranda and Azumi type buff that comes from Ornella's shield. Then again, there are lots of different damage skill capo options. Personally, I haven't seen any of them being particularly useful. So I'm not really going to rate any of them. Mostly because if you don't... So the reason Gianluca with Awakening is destroying everything in his way is because he just does so much damage that everything disappears. But if you don't have such a huge impact on the fight, you're better off with things like Azumi and Gigi and Eugenio. There's that. There's also an element of best 5 to use would really actually depend on your account, in the sense of, like my account with all the ones that I've listed, obviously I would use Miranda and Ava because they're two Amethyst star. Whereas Wesker specifically doesn't work at 1 purple star, so I'd never use him. So a lot of that is why I'd want to list more than 5, just because it's it depends on your account, what you have. I think sort of touching back on the synergy element of it, you would want a different set of things based on your synergy. And the other thing, which I don't actually have any of because I haven't got to the right rank yet, is the thing that makes the buff capos like Ava, Azumi, Gigi, that and Ornella for that matter, that much stronger is Plasma Blaster for the crit chance, synergizing with Miranda's crit damage. The bleed from the skill damage capo, so the Gatling gun, it's still good, but it doesn't have the same synergy because it just does more damage. The nerf, the shrink ray, again is good, but isn't game breaking. Again, since Wheels is already reducing, again at 60% on this, adding a little bit more doesn't make that much difference. And Plasma Cutter would only really work with the Omega skin, doing a tiny amount of extra healing to self, so nothing to rant and rave over about. Anyone else I think I've missed? Anything else I think is important to mention? There's lots of other viable options, especially if we're imagining a world where there aren't any Awakened capos. Things like Hidenobu having 50% damage reduction for 3 rounds is pretty useful. You could also have things like the Enzo skin, which again reduces skill damage by 40%. Situationally could be really good. But I think a lot of that is if you have the choice to use them, and the fact that you would be better off using what you have than trying to shoehorn in an Enzo because he's low star. In fact, let's just quickly go through some of the healers that are viable. Vincent, with skin reduces skill damage by 30%. So is again perfectly viable against damage skill heavy capo team lineups. Angelina with skin doubles healing on support skilled buffed capos, which again, in the context of what I've just said, is going to be practically everyone. And Sandra, when I spot her, the part exceeding the capo's maximum health is converted into shield. Again, it's only healing one capo, so maybe that's slightly less good, but it means that you're always getting full value out of the heal, which is sometimes hard to get. So again, especially in a world where there aren't explosives, everyone's dying instantly type things, the healing capos do definitely have more value there. So if you have one of those leveled up already, they can be good. I just wouldn't recommend leveling them in the first place because of the bigger picture meta. But if you're on an account that does have them leveled, don't shy away from them just because people say, the meta says you should use these 5 capos, definitely use them. I think of all the capos, if I really wanted to pick on one, it would be poor old Laura, because even with skin, that damage skill is not impressive. Targets only a single enemy and then stuns them for 2 whole rounds, and since there's so much stun immunity, reflection, all that kind of stuff floating around, it's very likely a single target damage, but on death, and isn't that much compared to other damage skills. I mean, it's definitely better, but it's not incredibly strong. So Laura gets my vote for, if there's one cap I wanted to pick on to say isn't worth using, there you go, there's my vote. But practically everything else can have its day in the right situation. Is there any benefit of having a whole team of same nationality or the same trait? No, there is very little synergy. Outside of the mythicals, the only one that has a nation bonus is Ornella's skin, which increases the accuracy of all friendly Italian capos by 20%. So outside of Ornella, and specifically Ornella with a skin that you can't purchase anymore, they'll eventually release for diamonds, but for the moment is ungettable. And then even then, that only increases 20% accuracy, which is good, but I wouldn't build an entire Italian team just for that Ornella. Otherwise, I don't think there are any trait synergy boosts that I am aware of. That's probably a good suggestion to IM there. Introduce some trait boosts, as long as they're not blooming strength, because we've got 3 awakened strength capos, so any biz or tech bonuses would probably go a long way. The mythicals have reasons to go same nation. In fact, each one of them has a boost specifically for their nation, but the only legendary capo is Ornella and is specifically tied to the skin. Cool. I feel like that's enough of me rambling on that, so let me just